One of the things we often claim is that we have discovered the world's most well-kept business secret, which is the dependency on a very small amount of people. A reasonably okay salesperson is coming back and making a proposal for that exact need. A mega dealer is, yes, hear the same need, but see something bigger. If I'm a good mega dealer, I'm very fast at assessing what are the odds, how big of a deal can we craft here, and what are the odds. And they actually very brutally exit early. So we often say that mega dealers have a sales funnel that looks like a T instead of a V.
Welcome to Road to Revenue Leadership, a show that candidly explores how hard it is to create, build, and scale world-class revenue organizations by leaders that have been there, done that, and have seen the results. My name is Dylan Mendes, founding CEO of USite, and I'm excited that you're tuning in to the podcast. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Enjoy. So maybe we should start with just, giving a little bit of introduction of Christopher Engman. Who is Christopher Engman? And maybe, later on we'll start and from the beginning of where you started. But for now, who is Christopher Engman?
Right. So I'm from the north of Sweden. I have 4 kids. From 4, 5, 9, and 22,
right.
Yeah. And I've lived in 5 countries: Italy, France, UK, Cyprus, Sweden, obviously.
And now you are you're back in Sweden then.
I am in Sweden, right?
Right.
I move a lot around the world, but I'm based in Sweden.
Right.
It's a pretty good spot because our main market. We work with a variety of customers, but our main customers are in the sustainability space, and Stockholm is very much a green capital. It's a very good base for sustainability businesses, both for fundraising, for growth, etc. It's a good ecosystem here. So we actually see even a lot of international companies placing their commercial headquarters, much like you did with Silicon Valley in the past with internet-related stuff. You placed a commercial headquarters in Silicon Valley. Now commercial headquarters are more and more placed in Stockholm, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And maybe can you give a little bit of a small pitch of what is it exactly that you do at, and what do you offer exactly at Megadeals Advisory?
Yes, so I'm the founder and the chairman, but I actually work full time, more or less, in Megadeals. I have 15 investments as well, everything from fully ownership to majority owner and more smaller. Combination of SaaS companies and green energy or sustainability companies. But in Megadeals, so I actually don't, I'm not a big fan of running staff. So and in Megadeals, we're 25 people, of which 6 people are actually CEOs. They've been CEOs several times. So I have quite a big base of leadership skills. So no one in the company reports to me. So that allows me to be more like, let's call it the ultimate expert.
Okay.
So I can geek
so
around.
Really go deep into what a mega deal is, how you approach it, what's the best thing to do, what not to do, and really help the clients directly then with those new findings.
Exactly. So I help the clients together with some of my team members to design the way of working for their large deals. So if you imagine a customer pyramid is typically very spiky, and in the top you have majority of the revenue, funny enough. So I co-design this based on the Megadeals discipline, and the client, we co-design their way of working for their existing and new top accounts. And so that exercise I do a lot, like probably 3 new companies per month, like on average. And I run those over the course of 4 half days. So not 4.5 days, but 4 times 4 hours. But with some like a week or 1.5 week in between with some homework. And then we have designed their way of working, their go-to-market, and the plan for their biggest opportunities. I do that. That's probably more than half of my time. And then the other part of my time I'm splitting between actually, so even though I don't carry any staff or anything, I'm still like very focused on acquiring new customers. So I'm very engaged in the new customer sales, and but I do like we have very 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 high conversion rates. So I do like 2-3 new customer meetings per week, and that leads to at least 2-3 new clients per month. So kind of very high hit rate.
It's definitely a hunting job.
Yes, but so we're using our own discipline. I've never done a cold call in the last 3 years. I'm not sitting there going email, reach out. So we're using our own. I can describe it later. We're using our own discipline on ourselves. So all our growth is run by our machinery, and very little time by humans, even though it's a kind of strategic play. And then the remainder of my time I spend on R&Ding, so continuously run R&D on all the aspects of Megadeals. Sometimes out in the market with front runners of various kinds, sometimes internally with the team where we're pushing the boundaries all the time on the various layers in the Megadeal. I feel fortunate that I'm allowed to geek around completely in this space, see fast growing or companies that want to grow fast all around the world. And I'm allowed to still be like a scientist part of my time.
No, I can definitely imagine, because I mean, I've read also a lot of interesting stuff about you being called the father of ABM. You working with a lot of scale-ups with Fortune 500 companies. So I think there is a lot to deep dive into when it comes to Megadeals, and definitely also interesting to understand more about those research and findings you have in there. But maybe we should back up a little, because I'm also very curious to understand more about your journey and how you got to the adventure that you're in now. And so maybe we should, go back a little bit into the beginning of your career. So I have here let's say, I have a little LinkedIn preparation here with me. And the first thing that really stood up from what I would expect it is that you really started as an entrepreneur. You became a commercial founder. Then again, you were sales and marketing director and co-founder at Axis System. And so you first really were an entrepreneur, then moved up to CRO position. And I'm kind of curious to understand, what was your ambition when you started? What were you actually chasing? What were you going after? And how did that evolve actually with the time?
Oh, depends on how far back you go, but I guess I've always liked to challenge status quos, and I think some of it comes from my mom was really, like, in a positive way pushy, but not pushing, like not putting pressure on me, but she was encouraging me to. I actually listened to LeBron James, the basketball player. It was an interview with him where he talked about his mother, and I could recognize some of that. I mean, he grew up in a very poor environment, and I mean, my parents were not at all well off in any way, but we were not poor either. But my mom did what he described, so she would continuously say to me that I can do whatever I want, I can be whatever I want, it's all in my head. So I was kind of felt that kind of base security very early, and went more into exploring new avenues, and felt the kind of psychological security behind it. So already when I was 10, I started my first company, sold candy out in the archipelago where there are no shops. So like supply and demand, using the lack of supply and the high demand. I mean, kids out in the archipelago wanting candy.
Yeah. Why did you start a company at the age of 10 then? What was the
it was a coincidence. It was pure serendipity. So my dad used to be in the military, and he had this card that gave him access to the wholesalers in the food industry. So he would be able to go into the places that where normal only shop owners have access. But he brought me one day, just, I was hanging out with him and he took me along, and I was going past these big boxes of candy, and I made a quick calculation. I looked, whoa, the price per piece is about a tenth of what I pay in the store. I mean, between a fifth and a tenth, but it is a very steep difference. The delta was very steep. So I was like, Dad, and he was walking ahead of me. I was like, Dad, wait 1 second. And I had already started to have this, like, what do you call it, monthly allowance from the family. So I was like, Dad, can I get a few months of prepayment of my monthly allowance? And I was standing by the candy boxes, and he was like, no way, you're not going to buy candy for your monthly allowance. I'm like, no, Dad, I'm going to sell it. And he was like, okay, yeah. So I can't remember, I got a few months of prepayment and bought a lot of these big boxes and brought them out in the archipelago. It was just serendipity. I just saw, wow, I can make money from this. And I had been a lot in the archipelago, and there, I mean, where I come from, there are I think it's more than 1,000 islands, but it's not densely populated, so each island does not have, or basically one island in the whole archipelago has some kind of restaurant. So there is no supply, basically, and high demand. So I was like, I can make some easy money here. And some of my friends called me, what is it called in Donald Duck, and the rich guy in Donald Duck? What is it called? You know which one I mean, right?
Not quite sure.
Is it Scrooge?
The what?
Scrooge. Well, in Donald Duck. The cartoon.
Yeah. Scrooge. Yeah. I think I know what you mean.
Scrooge. Yeah, yeah. So the rich duck. He
exactly.
So my friends were calling me Scrooge, like, oh, you're profiting on us. But I was like, but you don't have to buy. I mean, you're not forced to buy. But they were like, but you're the only one selling the candy. Like, that's correct.
That's exactly what bringing value is all about. So yeah.
Exactly. So that kind of triggered.
When you say challenge and the status quo, as you said earlier, do you mean then you also just wanted to do different things that the other kids and other younger self of you, didn't want to do, or didn't pursue, and you just wanted to be different, the outlier in some way?
I don't know. If it was that I wanted to be different. It was more like I was not afraid of it, and already in 6th grade I started another company which was slightly more advanced. We were selling sports gear to the football and ice hockey clubs in our in our vicinity. So driving maximum 45 minutes in whichever direction. So kind of around where I lived, me and a friend of mine who ended up playing in the NHL. So I took care of selling football gear, and he sold hockey gear mainly. But we were kind of going around the stores selling directly to the clubs, and that was in 6th grade. So our parents had to sign all the papers because you're not allowed to.
Oh yeah.
You're not allowed to start a company, not at 10 and not in 6th grade. What are you then, like 11 or something, or 10, 12? I can't. Yeah. So
very, very interesting. How does that further evolve then? Because what I hear from them is that you actually saw an opportunity and you went all in into that opportunity and tried to make some decent money with it, but also just provide an activity and some value with it. But did it change eventually that you said, all right, now I really want to do something that's meaningful, that has a lot of impact, and that is going to take me a couple of years to achieve? And if yes, when was that exactly in that career phase? In
all honesty, the direction around what is now Megadeals started as late as 2007. So I did a few things before that. I started what is now the leading, at least Nordic, company handling the transactions behind gift certificates and bonus cards. And then also the biggest company in the Nordics handling taxi bookings and taxi, directing the cars where they should go, etc. And then, but those two journeys actually formed a very clear need, because in both those I experienced what we at Megadeals call the rainmaker dependency, which is kind of both big companies have it, but it's even more painful in smaller companies where a founder or two of the founders or someone that has the skills to kind of both talk about the technical stuff from you, the technical stuff on the customer side, the customer processes, the customer KPIs, their big initiatives, their strategies, and how you fit into that and how you then orchestrate such a deal. I think it's what we've seen is that kind of skill set is very scarce. And even in the biggest companies in the world, they're pointing at a handful of people. So there are some, much like in sports, there are a few really. You're French, right?
Belgian, French speaking though.
Belgian, yeah. So, but you have Lukaku and people like that, Eden Hazard, and I mean, there are a few like pivotal people, right? And you might think, well, there are millions of football players, right? How?
Right.
There must be a lot of stars, but in reality, it isn't. Like, there's still a small number of names that make tremendous difference. Like you saw in Argentina, Messi, and now he's still old. He's already old, but he made a tremendous difference. And it's the same in the business world. So one of the things we often claim is that we have discovered the world's most well-kept business secret, which is the dependency on a very small amount of people. So, and we found, as I said, in take Ericsson, for example, 5,000 commercial people. Now this data is a bit old, but it's probably similar numbers now. We asked 40 people independently, and they all point at 4 to 6 names, of which 4 names appeared almost all the time. And then you look at their account structure, 17 accounts represent 80% of the global revenue and more than 80% of the global profit. And then you see that there are 4 names that are absolutely pivotal to win and grow those 17 accounts. Of course, they're not doing it alone. They have big teams behind them. But we call them orchestrators or mega dealers. They are great at orchestrating large deals. And it's a bit like Messi winning the World Cup for Argentina. He used to be just a good player. Now he's also a good leader. He knows how to motivate the team. You saw this speech before the World Cup final. He was really pushing them, encouraging them, and it's actually relatively similar. A similar phenomenon.
Just to be sure, you mean from the buyer side or the seller side?
Seller side.
From the seller side, that there is a Messi in the team that can orchestrate and really. Because when you talk about the rainmaker dependency, you really talk about the couple of people at the buyer side that have a lot of influence in making the
on the seller side. On the
seller side. All right, my bad.
But actually, to your point, that exists on the buyer side as well. But we have not looked at it from that perspective. But there are you find similar characteristics. So there are three types that are having similar characteristics. CEOs in very large companies have a very good multidimensional GPS. Not all of them, but the successful ones. Serial entrepreneurs have a similar multidimensional GPS, and mega dealers. So I give you an example for mega dealers. So let's say there is an opportunity with, what should we take? I had this name of a Belgian telecom operator in my head, but it fell out.
Proximus, Telenet.
Yeah, Proximus. Actually, it was Proximus. Yeah, so Proximus. Right. So let's say Proximus is knocking on our door with an opportunity. They say, we have this need, can you help us? A reasonably okay salesperson is coming back and making a proposal for that exact need. A mega dealer is, yes, hear the same need, but sees something bigger. And is able to get his or her team to understand that bigger vision, but also to get the people on the company side, on the buyer side, to see a much bigger vision. So basically, they come back with an opportunity that has 2 extra zeros. Same fundamental need, but they kind of open Pandora's box, and it's the same in and we think that is based on the scale of pattern recognition. Like you almost like see around the corner. It's a bit like in sports. Some of the best athletes in team sports, they read the game slightly faster than the others. So they see, if I move here, the ball will probably come, and I will be in a good position.
Right.
And
anticipation
they kind of,
and
strategy.
strategy.
They anticipate, and they see things bigger and faster. And that's kind of a core talent for mega dealers, but it's also the same core talent for serial entrepreneurs and big successful group CEOs for big companies.
Interesting, because do you see then some commonalities between those mega dealers? Do they have some characteristics that are very specific, or do they look at life through a different lens, or what do they do or are different?
Right. So since they have since these 3 groups have similarities, they are typically friends even, because they connect easily. But if you imagine 3 different rooms, so in one room we have very successful CEOs, in another room we have successful serial entrepreneurs, successful CEOs, mega dealers, and then we have regular salespeople. So you mingle around with a cocktail, speaking to all 3 groups. You will not be able to distinguish the mega dealers from the CEOs.
Okay.
The regular salespeople you will distinguish from the other 2. So mega dealers are quite CEO-like in their both attitude. They're very unafraid. They're not afraid even to, like a super senior stakeholder on the customer side, to debate something and kind of even say, well, I think you're wrong because. So they have very high integrity and high executive presence.
Do you then agree that...
And they are also...
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and much like a CEO. So a CEO has to have very good judgment. And the best mega dealers are very good at fast qualifying or disqualifying a case. So let's say you and I are talking and I can sell something to you. If I'm a good mega dealer, I'm very fast at assessing what are the odds, how big of a deal can we craft here, and what are the odds. And they actually very brutally exit early. So we often say that mega dealers have a sales funnel that looks like a T instead of a V. So they don't keep deals floating that are kind of semi-likely. They just skip them and they put all their energy. It sounds like a bit of a coward strategy, but it's very successful. And the best negatives are very, very cynical. And this is a CEO trait. So CEOs have to have a similar judgment. Like, great idea, Dylan, but this, I don't think this will fly because this and that. And of course, also in parallel saying yes to things, but with a very kind of criticizing eye. So the best mega dealers are, and they even show the client that they're prepared to walk away, not just as a tool for negotiation, but just to walk away entirely, regardless of the negotiation.
Yeah, and I mean, by doing so, you also build some kind of reputation that you're not just for everyone. But then when people are the one that are qualified, they will come even more easily to you. I 100% believe that.
Correct.
But do you then think that to win at the game of mega deals, you need to be born that way, or can you really work on it? Can you?
No, you can work on it. You can work on it. Yeah. So there are so this pattern recognition thing is maybe in the core a talent. I think you can work on it, but you can't substantially move the needle. But everything except for that you can work on. For example, being good at exiting cases early, that's a method. You just clarify what are the characteristics, and this is, I mean, I'm not unique saying this. What is our ideal customer? An ideal customer is not just firmographics and which role I'm speaking to. It's also about which key initiatives do they have? Do we match those? What are their top financial goals? What kind of culture do they have? So it can be, are they more like, is this a pioneer organization, or are they a follower? So there are a lot of things that can go into the list of criterias where you have a good fit. I think ideal customer profile has been kind of kidnapped by database companies with very hard things, but half of the list can be soft things like attitudes, or is this company, do they like to be doing things first in their industry, or are they observing and then following benchmarks or things like that? But so that can definitely be trained and systematized. What can also be systematized, which is one of my key tasks with our clients, is to work on, if you imagine a skyscraper, and here, like, this is only for the illustration, but in the top floor you have the owners, the board, the C-level, the VPs, the directors, blah 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 blah. So one thing that most sales leaders and marketing leaders miss is how large companies are making decisions. So by understanding because a lot of companies are talking about persona, and that's typically a functional area. You have to look at that. But I would say in the Megadeals space, it's actually more important to understand what are the hierarchical differences. So for example,
and the dynamics between it, probably.
Yes. To simplify it a bit, in the top, they're looking at, are we doing the right things? And in the bottom, they're looking at, are we doing things right? And this is, of course, very simplified. We do it way more refined in the workshops. But in essence, you need to understand which topics are on the radar for each hierarchical level. And then design your positioning, the category and subcategory design, and the messaging to fit how a large company is making decisions. So I'll give you a stupid example. So if I come in to, because a lot of people say you need to go for the C-suite. Yeah, but you need to know what to say to them, because you only get one chance. If you're in front of the CEO of a big company, or even as simple as a head of a country which is relatively large, you have one shot. And if you come in and do a demo with them, you are going to be sent to the people that are looking at, are we doing things right? Because what they're looking at is, are we doing the right things? And that's a different perspective. So they're looking at the puzzle and which big pieces should be a part of the puzzle. So they are debating what we call categories and subcategories, and how they fit their key initiatives, and how they fit their top goals, short-term, long-term. And if you don't know how to talk about that, you will not get access. And that can be, first of all, designed, and we help our clients to design that. Secondly, it can be taught. Like, we run training sessions how to be able to apply it, so that you're not running the demo meeting with a CEO of a medium-sized or large corporation. That's not a good idea, because he or she will tell you to go down to Stefan. If this is the skyscraper and beneath you have parking lots, and under the parking lot Stefan is sitting, he wants to see the technical specs. This is, of course, just a joke, but it's to illustrate. And if you want to speak to that,
I 100% get that, and I think it's even more complex than that, probably, because you have the hierarchical differences, but you also have the functional departments, and all working on other projects, but sometimes also layered projects or projects that have some overlap. So I can see why a mega dealer needs to really have an holistic view of what happens at those accounts. But my question is now, how easy is it really to get a lot of transparency from the accounts? Is that easy, or does it really also require some specific skills? Could be research, or asking the right questions, or put in relationship through someone else, or what's your
good question?
So
so it's very difficult. So one of the sub services that we offer our clients is something we call account intelligence, and that's imagine you have the stakeholder map with the top owners, board, etc., all the way down to the functional areas, countries, what have you. So we map that for our clients' most important accounts because their own teams don't have the time, don't have the tools. It often gets it's on the to-do list and it never happens. So we serve the top salespeople and the top marketeers with that kind of foundation. In that, we also include research around what is this company's top financial goals, what are their 3 to 5 key initiatives, which kind of vendors do they already have, what's the latest news feed, stock price, what are trending in their industry, et cetera, and that kind of account support, account intelligence support, is something we do, and it's semi-automated. So some of it we've automated, some of it we do with humans. But it's if you would do it the traditional way, it will take forever.
No, I can definitely imagine that. Maybe what are some kind of information that you have seen with clients that they think super valuable, never thought of that before, never thought of looking that up or getting the information or finding that information that you brought in, and they were like, oh gosh, okay, thank you so much for this. This is so helpful.
So,
what I like, thank you much for this.
If I need to give you, I could give you the two most important ones. I mean, there's a long list, but the two really, really pivotal. The first one is to understand your target account's key initiatives. And they're typically 3 to 5. Some companies call them strategic programs, big bets. Because the thing is, so you find it sometimes in the annual reports, and sometimes you need to do a research on their news feed. You need to read what the CEO is writing. Sometimes you need to go all the way to actually make some calls. It's typically well communicated internally, at least. So most of the people internally have some kind of reasonably good awareness of the key initiatives. But the reason why that is important, those are driving this customer from where they are to where they want to be. And they're building those to overcome some clear obstacles, some key problems that they're facing. And what is important for large deals is that in the key initiatives, big budgets are located. Outside of the key initiatives, you can find pilot budgets. But what's even worse than losing a deal is to get the chance to get to do a pilot. It's successful, but you still don't get the rollout. That's even worse because you wasted time, and that happens. I would say if you get your whole sales team to even without us involved. I mean, we do it for our clients, but if you get your own salespeople to properly check what are the key initiatives for each of the prioritized accounts, that alone can be like a 50% increase in effectiveness. And the second one, and that's typically I should have thought about that. Of course, the brightest people in a sales organization, they kind of do this because they have an intuition around it, but they haven't systematized it. And then the second one is the difference between a budget and a sign-off level. So in large companies, you can have a budget of 100 million euros to spend during a year. But your sign-off level is 100,000 euros. So I see a lot of, especially junior salespeople, they're like, yeah, I spoke to Dylan or Steven or whoever, and it's his area, it's his budget, and he has now said yes. Does that mean that the deal is done? No. Because let's say your deal is worth 1 million euros or 5 million euros. Already those levels are typically pushing the decision all the way to the board, sometimes even to the shareholder meeting. Because it's in the governance. Each large company has a very clear governance model where sign-off levels are dictated, and you're not allowed to break them. You can't. You're not allowed to sign a contract above your sign-off level. So what happens is that if you're the buyer, you say to me typically very late, oh, Christopher, I'm on board. I want to do this. I just need to talk to my boss and my boss's boss. And then they will present it at the next board meeting. My Lord, that reduces your likelihood to win from what you felt was 90% to all of a sudden it's 15%. So just understanding the difference between budget level and sign-off level is like a very simple takeaway. Anyone listening, I mean, some of you think about this continuously, but some of you don't. So what typically happens is that most deals are floating way higher up in the hierarchy than the sales and marketing people think, because they haven't thought about sign-off levels. And another thing that pushes a decision up is if you're covering several functional areas. Let's say you're head of sales, and this deal that I'm proposing to you is not influencing just sales, it's influencing marketing and customer success, for example. Then you are not, even though you have the sign-off level, you're still not allowed to sign it, because we need to have a sign-off cross-functionally. Or if what you're buying has strategic importance, then it typically needs to float all the way to the board, even if the deal size is small, because it has a strategic implication. So those kind of perspectives are often in a large sales team completely forgotten, except for among the superstars. And those are very easy to put in for any sales leader listening to this. Put in your checklist. So, Christopher, have you checked the sign-off level of your counterpart, and who needs to sign this deal before it can be executed? How high do we need to go? And typically, if you don't ask it early, it'll come up as a bad surprise very late. And then what typically happens is that we haven't anchored the deal higher up, so it comes like a news. And very often higher up, they go, yeah, great idea, Dylan, but can we postpone this to sometimes next year, because we have some more important things on the table right now? And you go back to the vendor going, yeah, they were super enthusiastic, but it won't happen this year. And I've spent maybe months on this deal. So those two, so sign-off levels versus budgets, and then key initiatives, to mention two. There are a lot of things, but those two are like relatively easy to understand and remember.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. How, because you have been a CIO, right? Also?
I've been a CEO many times. I've been a CIO. Yes, I've been a CRO, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that's very funny, because I think it was still quite early in your career that you were a CIO. Now, and for the rest, I think you have a pretty quite commercial profile, if I can say it like that. And now definitely all into that Megadeals. But I read on your LinkedIn that you said that there at that position, while being a CIO, you really learned also a lot of the purchasing, the buying behavior at the buyer side.
Yes.
And was that intentional, or how does it come that
it wasn't. So I've run my own companies almost all the time, and then I had I wanted a break from entrepreneurship for a while. So, and then one of my clients, I was only 27, but I got to be the.
I want to stop you there. You said you wanted to have a break of your entrepreneurial journey. Why was that?
Yeah. I was one of my companies failed. We bankrupted. Luckily, we restarted and it became successful. But I was the rainmaker, so I was almost burned out. I was so fatigued. I was just super tired, and then having even though I got a job, like I was in the highest leadership team in that group with 3,000 employees, and the CIO role is not like calm. But relative to what I had done for the earlier few years, it felt like holiday. But it was very, very valuable looking at Megadeals, because all of a sudden I was responsible for POS systems, ERP systems, e-learning, e-commerce, so pretty substantial things. And buying those is not a one-man show. You need to have a lot of yeses. Much like the same thing you experience as a vendor when running a decision on the buyer side, you also need to win a lot of votes, both higher up functional areas. So you need to do a lot of championing on even on the inside. So I experienced a lot of politics around the decisions, and it was very valuable. It's a valuable period. But I also saw how tech companies were pitching to me. They went too fast into, this is a problem, here's our solution, this is why we're better than our competitors. But I was building the puzzle. I was like, why is this even important? Like, I have all these islands of challenges. First of all, why is the challenge you're solving why is it even on the top list? And that typically salespeople are very good at explaining, because they're not used to talking about competing challenges. And then below that, what are the various categories that can solve each big challenge? Because it's not always your type of solution. It can be you're most of the time competing with other challenges, or you're competing with other categories. So most vendors are way too fast. Oh, this is the problem. Look, our solution is great. We're better than X, Y, Z because this and this. And I was like, I'm not there. I'm trying to prioritize up here. So it became very clear how you think as a big buyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely.
And that's going back to how we design the positioning, category design, subcategory design, messaging, etc. Because understanding how large corporations are making decisions and what you as a vendor are really competing with, and how you need to describe what you're offering more as a route of choices along the way, as opposed to capabilities and benefits. And that's a very important distinction. It's easier to communicate choices and how a customer is making choices, rather than talking about a solution and its characteristics.
Something I'm wondering also, is that also maybe thanks to that experience that you weren't looking to Megadeals like, whoa, this is too much? I would think that maybe a lot of people, when they hear about what a deal of more than $1 million, that's unrealistic. That's not human. That's not something I can do. Have you maybe, have those previous experiences help you maybe cross that mindset barrier in some way?
Oh yeah.
Do you see that with other people?
Yeah. I mean, we deal with companies doing deals from a few $100,000 all the way up to several billions. The biggest deals we have researched are the 57 billion euros is the largest deal we have investigated, which is not a company.
57 billion.
Yeah,
it's not an M&A.
Yeah. I can't. It's either Boeing or Airbus is one of the two. Like you buy a lot of airplanes, you buy required softwares, SLA services, and what have you. It's a pretty comprehensive,
solid
deal. But the funny thing
how many
is
people do you know how many people were involved in that deal?
That specific, no, but I have an example from IBM. So we looked at IBM's largest deal ever in Morocco, and only the amount of people that signed NDAs on the customer side were 499. So 499 people on the customer side signed NDAs. So, but the thing is, as soon as you have, to summarize it, you have to convince many hierarchical levels and several functional areas. Your offering is multi-complex, so typically it can actually be only software, only hardware, or only services, but it's often actually a mix of products or a mix of technology types. And you're entering into a mix of surrounding systems, processes, and KPIs on the customer side. When you have those four, whether you like it or not, actually regardless of deal size, you're moving into the orchestration space, because it's no longer, do I convince Dylan and a few of his colleagues? No, it's a game of orchestration. How do I orchestrate my own forces, and how do I orchestrate the force on the customer side? Which is what the Megadeals are really good at. That kind of orchestration. And Megadeals is an orchestration discipline.
Yeah, 100%. Is there maybe a trait or a characteristic that you see is really not the thing that you would want if you want to win at Megadeals?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Are there some certain personal traits, characteristic that you see that, are not really good. Just one I can think of in the top of my head is maybe not letting things go or not willing to be in control of everything. I think that's not a winner when it comes to winning at Megadeals.
So in the Megadeals space, so what you often see, especially from sales consultants, they're like, yes, you should have this very sequential process linear, where you do that, a linear process. So that is not possible in the orchestration world. So an orchestration deal is often, if you illustrate it, it looks like a lot of threads going on like this, and then boom, all of a sudden you make a deal, and it's more of a, like, you move positions on many fronts at the same time. It's a bit the difference between maybe a bad timed analogy, but run a full war compared to one battle. Like, you need to move a lot of chess players step by step. So it's not, you can't really say either. So now this account is in this stage. They're now in the consideration stage. What you can say is that Dylan and some of his closest colleagues that are in the core buying group, they are now in the consideration stage. Whereas a lot of people above them and around them are still in, I don't even know if this is an important thing to solve. So to them, we need to sell the problem and make it more impactful than competing problems. Whereas with a core group, we might be progressed. So that's also why we illustrate each account as the whole stakeholder map, because we can then talk about that these guys are not even introduced to this at all. So there's no point. And to talk, again, going back to my experience as a CIO, if I talk to someone that is not even introduced to the problem, and you then start to compare solutions or direct competitors, they're like, so it's more effective to them to market and get the priority of the problem. Whereas for the core group, you're now in the comparing solutions kind of thing.
Right. Christopher, I would ask you so much more questions, but unfortunately we are reaching the end of this discussion. First of all, let me thank you so much for being here, being in this call, having this discussion, letting me asking you a lot of questions. Maybe a question for you, and that's actually a question I ask all my guests, but if Christopher would be a brand, and you kind of are a brand, so I can say it, Christopher is a brand, so what does a Christopher brand stands for?
Most people actually spontaneously say after meetings, this was an inspiring meeting. So inspiring, it feels weird to say it, but I kind of repeat I just hear it a lot. It's like there must be something there. They say it was an inspiring meeting. But then I almost went into mathematical science. I've even written, my first book was about how to forecast government budgets, which is super mathematical. Okay. So maybe my brand also has some kind of, actually a combination of visionary but analytical.
I can
because
see that.
I'm actually very mathematical, but I'm also, most mathematicians are not super visionary. So it's kind of an unusual combination. Maybe.
How to Inspire with Logic by Christopher Engman. Let's go.
I can live with that.
No, Christopher, thank you so much again. Luckily for us, and I hope also for you, is that you will join us on May 11th at the We Are Sales Conference. Super excited to have you there.
Yes.
Thank you again also for being here. Yeah.
Brussels.
All right. So it's exactly at Brussels. And so we'll see you around. We'll see you again. And thank you again, Christopher. Wishing you the best.
I can't wait.
That's it. We have once again reached the end of an episode. I just really appreciate you all spending the time. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Until next week with a fresh new episode.